You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon, Frida Liu, Tech Talk Time. Previously, we covered on hacking issues such as DDoS attacks and other types of internal security risks. And recently, there's been much noise made on advanced persistent threats, or APT. And here to talk about this ongoing noise is Krishnaraja Gopal, the CEO for AKATI Consulting. So what is APT?
Hi, Frida. Now, advanced persistent threats. These are malicious cyber attacks that occur on an unprecedented scale with extraordinary sophistication. I know I sound like a politician in my choice of words, but if you put it
like
simply,
cancer.
Yeah, exactly. If you put it simply, if you just break down APT, right, advanced persistent threat. I know some people used to tell me that, well, you know, if I use a DDoS attack and I keep attacking it, so I'm persistent, and it's a threat, so it attacks you, that means I'm using APT. That's wrong. All right. When we talk about advanced persistent threat, let's address each one of those terms on its own. Advanced, we're talking about highly sophisticated attack vectors. Now, we're using a combination. So these criminals use a combination of attack vectors. All right. I know, for example, the individual vectors themselves, for example, buffer overflow, worms, Trojans, they're not highly sophisticated. They're not new. They've been there for a while. But in combination, all right, that's something new. So they work in tandem. They are in combination of multiple attack vectors with the purpose and the goal to break into the target. All right, and that's why we call it advanced, highly sophisticated. And when we talk about persistent, remember the movie Mission Impossible?
Yes.
You remember there used to be this message which says, you know, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds?
Yes.
Yeah, right? So that's the kind of feature that most hacking tools nowadays have. They call it melting. Okay. So once the tool is actually installed, it melts itself to run away from detection. So that's the kind of persistence that we're talking about. Persistence here refers to the characteristic of that state.
But it's still there.
It's still there. That sort of continues to outlive the process that created it in that first place. That's persistence, right? Not just continuously attacking. And of course, when we talk about the threat portion of it, we're actually we're very sure that there must be a level of coordinated human involvement in the attack. It's not just a piece of automated code. So that's advanced persistent threat.
Some humans are involved in this. So how are they generally carried out?
All right. Now, this is very interesting. Now, just before we start off, I just want to say that, you know, the attacks today are just as effective as they were in 1998, for example, when I got introduced to the world of hacking. And the bad guys still have their zero-day attacks, and that still works. They still have their vectors that still work, and they still have their malicious code that still works. And on another note, we've got a new term, like what I was telling you just now. We've got cyber cartels, right? And the prediction is that these cyber cartels are going to cause more damage in global security than drug cartels, right? An interesting thing is last year, the Russian mafias made more money in online banking fraud than they made selling cocaine. So that's the kind of thing. And to know how it actually is carried out, very simple. Every APT has got 3 portions of it. We've got the infection, we've got the payload, and we've got the control. Right? So there must be a portion in which the attack actually comes in and infects your network. And this can be through the internet. Right? We're talking about drive-by downloads. We're talking about
drive-by downloads.
Yeah. So it attacks, and these are highly sophisticated attacks which maybe infects your wireless modem, wireless router, a website, for example. Then we've got whaling. Whaling. That's another type of phishing. And then we've got spearfishing, right? Spears in Britney Spears, yeah? Spearfishing. And these are new types of attacks that are specifically targeted towards APT. All right? And then, of course, we've got physical malware infection. For example, if I'm an organization and I want to infect this whole nation, I would sell a backdoored IT equipment.
A what?
A backdoor
IT equipment.
So I put the malware within my IT equipment, and I'll tell that this IT equipment is a super IT equipment. Put it in and you're safe. All right? And then, of course, we've got external attacks. So they would attack cloud computing. virtualization, right, smartphones. So that's where the infection portion of the attack comes from.
Right.
And then, of course, you got payload. Payload is basically what you want the attack to do after you've gained access, and then control. Now, to put it all in a nutshell, I would say that if you watch the movie Ocean 11, I like the tagline, 11 men, 3 casinos, $150 million, right? So it's pretty much similar to that, where, in that movie you've got George Clooney leading a whole team of 10 men, including himself. And what they did was they actually had a lot of patience, a lot of planning, a lot of research, done extensive research on the weaknesses of the casinos, how they actually operate.
Okay, so it's not an overnight thing.
No, right? And then using that, they used a little bit of social engineering, and then they went in. And of course, when they went into the casinos, no one actually knew they were there until the point of the heist itself. All right? So, advanced persistent threat is pretty much similar to the Ocean 11 movie. Yeah, and again, I would like to think that Ocean 11 copied Advanced Persistent Threat.
This reminds me of that girl, the Russian spy, Annie Chapman.
Yes.
How she just sort of got herself into the society,
correct,
got married, and
So these things have been going on.
She is an advanced persistent threat.
Correct. So these things have been going on for a while. It's just that now the same groups have now used cyber intrusion techniques as part of that.
Okay, let's talk about some examples of these stories, because,
Okay, let's talk about examples, real-life examples. We've got the government sites, the intergovernmental issues, and then we've got the private side. Now, talk about private, the whole APT term was coined ever since Google was attacked in China. Remember the Project Aurora that we had a interview on? So that's ever since that Project Aurora, Google actually sort of coined this term, and they said, this is an advanced persistent threat. And InfoSec professionals have dealt with this kind of cases for a long time. They used to use a different terminology for it. We used to call it low and slow, right? So it's a low and slow attack. And since Google's attack in China, we've had a case where IDC, China Telecom, they hijacked 15% of the world's internet traffic. And they were specifically interested in the U.S. government traffic. And then since then, we've had a case where the C-level executives, only the C-level executives from ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, Marathon Oil were attacked, right? And they were attacked using whaling, right? And since those attacks, we've also seen a lot of attacks that focus on utility-based companies, power companies, and oil and gas.
What are they looking for?
Well, they're looking for trade secrets. They're looking at the way of your operation, latest trends. Now, for example, financial institutions like, say, in China and Hong Kong, they're more interested in your latest promotions because it's so highly competitive. They want to know your promotions before it gets out to the market.
Okay. Right.
And that's on the corporate side. So they've got something to deal with information theft, trade secrets. On the government side, this has been going on for a while. I mean, I talk about the first APT that I could remember was in 1991 in the Gulf War, when some Dutch groups actually stole information from the U.S. Department of Defense on the U.S. troop movements. And they actually wanted to sell it to the Iraqis.
I see.
But the Iraqis actually thought it was a hoax and turned it down. How sad, isn't it? And of course, they lost the war. But ever since then, we've had a case where we had GhostNet. That was a spy network that was created. A lot of the traffic came from China. 103 countries were attacked. All right. We unfortunately are also in that list.
Oh, okay. Now, when you're talking about how, with Project Aurora in Google, can you imagine the number of people that have Gmail accounts?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's just disrupts the company, disrupts, everything.
And of course, in terms of China as a whole, they've been trying to put a hold on Google for a long time. They've tried pressuring the CEO, they've tried intercepting the communication, and their aim is, if I know what these 100 or 200 million people are talking or discussing, I could have one step or two steps ahead of what's actually going to happen.
All right, I'm speaking to Krishnaraja Gopal, CEO of AKATI Consulting, about advanced persistent threats for APT, and in just a moment we'll talk about, other stories around this. It's very interesting. Tech Talk BFM 89.9. Good afternoon, Frida Liu here, and with me in the studio is Krishnaraja Gopal, the CEO of AKATI Consulting, and we're talking about advanced persistent threats in Tech Talk. And earlier on we spoke about, the purpose of this kind of attacks, and really many reasons that may not be so obvious, but can really cripple an organization or the government as well.
That's
now,
true.
are CIOs aware of these sort of attacks?
I think a lot of CIOs that are in charge of large organizations are aware, but again, it's easily misunderstood. For example, let's talk about the recent attacks that has taken place in New Zealand, for example, that has taken place in RSA, Sony. What happens is, it seems at this point in time, it's a convenient excuse. All right, it's sort of a little manual somewhere that claim that it's highly sophisticated, claim that that your network is still fine, claim that it's from China and it's an advanced persistent threat. So it seems like it's a very convenient excuse, but a lot of situations we found that actually it's not really APT, it's a real attack. And CIOs tend to just get hyped up about this. I think they need to just take a step back, look at the situation, understand the characteristics of APT, and understand the characteristics of normal attacks, and then try to differentiate between them.
Okay. The attack on the New Zealand, it was the government, right? Yeah,
it was attack against the government.
I'm not going to ask why New Zealand. But what were they looking for?
Maybe the quality of the sheep. No, but again, they stole some crucial information regarding tax structures, certain taxpayers' information, and they were not interested in credit card details and stuff like that. They were interested in other juicy information, and we're not really sure as to the origin of this attack at this point in time, but whoever it was had some interest in New Zealand.
Okay, you were talking about the attacks on Sony's PlayStation network. The most recent one, was that considered an APT?
Right. Well, as far as Sony's PlayStation network attack, two things. First of all, Sony's attack, which compromised personal records of almost about 77 million people's personal details, credit card details, right? Sony claimed that as APT, right? They found they publicly said that this was an APT. That was the first lie that Sony said, right? The second lie was that...
Okay, that's according to him. Okay.
The second one was that Sony also claimed that the passwords were highly secured and encrypted, and it was only hashed. Now, in reality, of course, when we did a post-mortem of that Sony's attack, it was just a basic, highly simplistic web application attack.
Basic, highly simplistic.
So that doesn't qualify as an APT. All right, it was just a slash and grab kind of an attack where they just went in, steal as much as information as they can, and left.
Okay.
Yeah, so that wouldn't consider. I wouldn't consider that as an APT. The attack on RSA, for example, that was claimed as an APT recently, that's an APT. They were in there for a couple of months. All right.
So they appear and then they disappear.
Yes, and it's a very low and slow attack. So they're in there, but you don't know they're there.
Just lurking.
Yes.
It's not laughing matter, but so how do you avoid this then?
Right.
I'm just thinking about this, right? Just Sony, like how all of us here in Malaysia even buy books from Amazon.
Correct. Correct.
And it's 2 clicks away, and everything is in there. See, not giving anyone any ideas, but
well, I'd like to think of it in two parts. First of all, if it's really APT, now these guys are highly skilled, highly trained, very patient, and very, very well funded. So they're not interested in credit card details. Right? So if there was a guy that has actually broken into an organization and stole credit card information, chances are he's one of those hacker dudes that's sitting at night with a can of Coke and trying to break into sites and see what he can steal so he could sell it off. All right? And those kinds of networks, those kinds of people are easier to catch. as to those highly trained. And those highly trained guys, they're
cyber cartels.
Cyber cartels. And they're not doing this as a sideline or as a freelancer. They're doing it as a full-time job. Imagine a complete raid team doing this on a day-to-day basis, right? And of course, it's very convenient for us to blame it on China. Right? Well, I mean, even if you look at it from that angle, there are 400 million internet users in China, all right? And a lot of them aren't well protected. So it's very easy for machines in China to be used as scapegoat.
Right.
Right? And organizations just go in and start doing a trace route on the IP and say, oh, it comes from China. Aha, I knew it. That's from Chinese. Right? But it's not the way to look at it because...
Poor thing.
Of course, I'm not saying they're completely innocent.
Okay, whatever. Whatever.
But how do we protect it? We've got to think of it in a larger scale. Remember that APT is a threat that's based on an organizational pattern. They know how you work. They know how you're structured. And that's how they come in.
Okay.
Right? So any technological response, any hardware or piece of software isn't just going to solve it. You need an organizational response. Right?
Right. So, you know, a lot of vendors, I know they talk about enterprise security solutions. Are they capable of addressing APT?
Well, only to a stepping stone. I would say these enterprise security solutions are a stepping stone. For example, they may help to deal with some of those attacks. But again, remember that almost all of these enterprise security solutions don't address zero-day exploits. Right?
Zero-day exploits.
Now, zero-day exploits are exploits that are out lurking in the wild that has not been alerted to the vendor or fixed by the vendor. So, for example, I'm giving an example. Let's say I've got a zero-day exploit for Adobe Acrobat, for example. Imagine the millions of users that have got Adobe Acrobat, right? Which means that every single one of them are vulnerable, right? Because Adobe, for example, Adobe has not patched it yet. Right? So that would be a zero-day exploit. And it's those kinds of exploits that you see used in these APTs. For example, the APT in Hydrak, Stuxnet, the worm that specifically targeted Iran's nuclear facility. That's an APT, and that used a zero-day exploit. Right? So these security solutions are good. They're a good stepping stone, but they're not the end all. You need an organizational approach to this. You need defense in depth strategy. You need to train your people.
So it's not a IT issue, it's an organizational...
It's an organizational issue.
So the whole organization should look at it and not just say, leave it to the IT department.
Just to think about it, I mean, how convenient it is. Could I just tailgate behind someone in an organization? Let's just say your office, you've got an access card, and I pretend that I'm carrying something very heavy.
Help me?
Help me, could you just... I can't reach my access card. And people are just so nice. Just open the door, and I've just gained access. So that's an organizational issue. It's not really a technological issue. You can't blame the access control is not working. Right. So everybody's similar to that.
Okay, so that's the lowdown on APT and of course or advanced persistent threats, and I'm sure we'll see Krishnaraja Gopal from AKATI Consulting again. Tomorrow in Tech Talk, Yash Malik, Area VP ASEAN for Citrix Systems, talks about virtualization, the cure for errant tablet users. Here's Marianne Faithful as years go by. BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, the business station.